Welcome to Coffee and History, a conversation with Alabama Heritage. We are your hosts. I'm Rebecca Mender.
I'm Susan Reynolds.
And we welcome you to this episode as we sit down with some of the most fascinating folks of Alabama. And you might be having a cup of coffee or some beverage of your choice, but we're very much coffeeaholics around here. Today we took our podcast on the road and we're actually filming in the beautiful downtown city of Mobile. And this is just an incredible view, I have to tell you. I absolutely love this city.
I love Mobile in general. And speaking of Mobile, and I know that you know this, Rebecca, but some of our listeners may not. Did you know that Mardi Gras was first observed in Mobile when Mobile was a French colony a century before the founding of Alabama?
Actually, yes, I did know that. And you know, it's amazing because I think there's so much fanfare with Mardi Gras in New Orleans. And it's vastly different, and I feel like, you know, Mobile just doesn't always get the props that it deserves because they were the OG when it comes to Mardi Gras, so they actually originated here. So yeah, I think that's a really cool fun fact to know.
Yeah, and for those listeners who are maybe unfamiliar with Mardi Gras, it is a festival that traditionally begins 40 days before Easter and proceeds the Lenten period. The name is French for Fat Tuesday, and that is the last day of carnival season.
You know, it's funny. My husband started working at a new company in Tuscaloosa, and his boss is from Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And so it was Fat Tuesday, and the branch that is here in Mobile was closed for the day. She had no idea. Why is it a holiday? What's going on? And we all looked at her and said, it's Fat Tuesday. That's why we brought you a king cake. And let me tell you, the knife stays in the box. You have to keep the knife in the box for your king cake. That's a rule. And she just didn't understand it. It was just something cultural, you know, because there are other people who celebrate it, but it's just, she couldn't understand why are they closing the office? So I don't know. You know, I think maybe our guest today can give us a little more background on what that's all about in this community.
Yeah, definitely. Our guest today is another fabulous Mobilian, one of our favorites again, Cart Blackwell. And Cart is originally from Selma, but could really hold the title of Mr. Mobile because of his encyclopedic knowledge of the city. Cart is the curator for the Mobile Carnival Museum, and he also serves on the Friends of Alabama Heritage Board of Directors. Welcome to our show, Cart. We're so happy to have you.
Rebecca, Susan, it's great to be with you all today.
Thank you, Cart. We're so glad to have you. So let's talk about this as a resident of Mobile. What exactly is the carnival season like here? I mean, are there parades every day? Does anyone even go to school or work? I mean, it just seems like it's a lot of fun.
You realize, right, carnival is a season in Mobile. Most southern towns have summer, football season, hunting season. We got carnival season. And we love it down in Mobile. It commences on the eve of Thanksgiving, when most people are thinking about football, turkey dinner, family, maybe not killing dinner. We are celebrating our first of over 80 carnival balls, and those balls
extend. And you're saying this is in Thanksgiving?
This is Thanksgiving. This is November. So the party starts early and it extends all the way to the early hours of Ash Wednesday morning, when every adult Mobilian of legal drinking age or not has left a portion of a function and never left.
But I mean, is that so? I don't understand. So why would it be? I mean, is this the only community that celebrates for that long of a season?
So many Gulf Coast communities have carnival traditions, and they all have their various start dates. The end date is always on the same Fat Tuesday.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And each community celebrates differently, and it's helpful to think of carnival as a living tradition. And it has a wonderful past, it has an exciting present, but it's always evolving and taking into account new traditions, new people. So it's fascinating. Each community is unique. I'm biased to Mobile.
Well, of course you are. I mean, but you're not originally from here.
I was not conceived under Mobile.
Okay. But that's okay. But this is your new home now. I'm sure everybody's adopted you as well. But you know, so it's been a long tradition, and I don't know, when was the very first actual Mardi Gras season?
The early celebrations of carnival on the Gulf Coast are very mythic in a way. We don't know what happened during the French and British and Spanish periods, but what we do know is in 1830, 4 Mobile men were on the river, And then and now, when 4 Mobile men are on the river, there's a 5th, and his name is Jack Daniels. These guys were having a very good time, and they came back into the city itself, and they did a walking procession. That's New Year's going into 1830. By 1837, that organization had established itself as the Cowbell and Reagan Society, the first mystic society in the country, and they established the template of American Carnival, which is very simple. It's an organization that adopts a theme, and that theme is articulated in a parade for everyone to see via floats. It is also articulated in a members and guest only ball through tableaus or theatrical performances. We know that happened in Mobile. It then went up the Alabama River system to inland ports such as Cobb, Selma, Montgomery, Livingston, Camden, and only in the 1850s went to our dear friends in New Orleans.
Right. Okay. So that was over 100 years later, right?
Definitely.
So I think you definitely are the originals. But I had read somewhere that like the only time this community has even taken a break from the season was like during the Civil War. Is that true? And was there any other times that there was a break
has
too?
Definitely impacted Carnival. We have a whole exhibit on the Mobile Carnival Museum looking at the subject of Carnival and warfare. During the Civil War, balls continued throughout the war, but the parading stopped. Each war which American Alabama has been involved with has had a different relationship to Carnival, but the Civil War was one where parading stopped. During World War I and World War II, we partied hardy with parades and balls until America entered into the war. Also during the coronavirus pandemic, there was an alteration to our celebrations.
But it seems like you still, but it was an alteration, so it wasn't like a complete.
Carnival is such a part of our psyche, the religious calendar, that it does go on, but parades and balls were not held. Mobilians, we are resourceful people. We had what was called Yardy Gras. We decorated our galleries downtown, our porches, our lawns.
So people can kind of walk
And
along
it kept
and
our
enjoy
float
it.
builders and our artists going. So we maintained the art, the fun, and the experience of being in our community. We just had to alter it.
I love that so much. Oh my goodness.
That's
I
good.
did not know about that. So Mardi Gras appears to be more family friendly here than maybe in New Orleans. As opposed to most of the rest of America, who mainly celebrate just on Fat Tuesday, which is the day before Ash Wednesday. Mobile celebrates the entire carnival season, like you were telling us. And tell listeners what the season is and the types of activities that happen here specifically.
There are so
because there's more than just parades.
There are so many events that inform the extended carnival season, and there's something for everyone. You have 80 area mystic societies that conservatively, with their membership, represent 40% of our occupation. So it breathes into the lives of these people. It's much more than parades and balls. They're walking processions. There's the build-up several days before within the community of, this is my event, this is what's going on. There's so many organizations that have strong philanthropic components. The parades are the major show of it. There are over 40 in the 3 weeks leading up to Fat Tuesday.
That's a lot of
There's
parades.
6 parades on Fat Tuesday alone. And you've got to think of these parades, they're like Broadway shows that you can attend for free. You have the dance teams and the bands. So it's much more than the floats that tell the story. And the cleanup crews are fascinating too. So it's so many things to see, and then you're watching the people on the floats. The people watching is great on the streets. So it is a true street festival that is very family friendly. And Susan, that is the distinctive component of Mobile Carnival, is family friendly.
But the difference between a procession and a parade, what's the distinction there?
The parades oftentimes developed from the walking processions, such as the First Mystic Society. They walked the first few years, then they got the floats. You have both the walking parades and the vehicular floats that pull the parade. So there are 2 different types. We have over 40 of the parades with the floats and numerous walking processions.
Right, okay. And I think, like, I was listening to the news in New Orleans after we had that tragic incident of someone driving through the street that was a pedestrian street, and they were saying, you know, this is right before the Mardi Gras season, and they were talking about how there was a lot of neighborhoods that actually have their own parades or their own processions, and so they're not, you know, what they would say, quote unquote, official parades or processions. And so they wanted to up the security, but they couldn't guarantee that they were going to have security for all of the neighborhood parades or processions. I mean, so does that kind of trickle down here as well, where you might have like your official parades, but then are there other smaller things that maybe you don't even know about that
Yes.
there's neighborhoods? Here we have a parade for dogs, you know. I mean, something as simple as that is part
There are
of the
many
season.
neighborhoods parades. So many schools, preschools, elementary schools have their royal courts, their parades. There are 2 local preschools that have floats, albeit parents, grandparents, and guardians pull the child in a little float that might be a stouter boat or something that represents the child's favorite game like Candyland.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that populate, things that can engage all generations. So there are definitely things happening in neighborhoods.
And I think that does make it much more family friendly, like Susan was talking about, and plus it just brings so much more to the community, which kind of explains why everybody probably would shut down and close the businesses.
Very much attuned. It is still a community and people and neighborhood owned, and we take so much pride in it. We look out for our people and of course our visitors to the city. We're accountable. We know we're going to see those people in the streets that we might see at a parade the next day. They might be going to our church. We might work with them. We might have seen that young person grow up through the years. So there's a lot of accountability. There's a strong police presence during Carnival. So it's policed in a good way.
Very safe.
And it's identity, you know, it's special.
Well, you know, I know about Joe Kane, but I want you to tell our listeners, if you don't mind, about Joe Kane, because I know he's really important to Carnival. And then also there is a story, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, so you're here to defend or tell me if it's wrong, but his skull was brought back from Bayou La Battery, where he had originally been interned. Somebody put it in their pocket and brought it here. I mean, so there seems to be this whole mystique, you know, especially for us who are outside of the Mobile community, and we know there's a whole Joe Kane Day, and there's a procession, and all these things dedicated to him. So if you could just explain to our listeners who he is and what that's all about. And is that a true story?
You realize the perfect word, mystique, man. That is so much of Carnival is informed, that within the community and without. Joe Kane is the most famous person in Mobile Carnival history, deservedly and possibly not deservedly so. He was among those people who helped bring the parading tradition of Carnival back after the Civil War. And he did a one-man walking procession on Fat Tuesday, 1868, and that was the first parade after Mardi Gras. It was the first person or group to start prioritizing parades on Fat Tuesday before the Civil War. Mobile celebrated events earlier in the pre-Lent social season on New Year's Eve or thereabouts. He was the first person to engage with a procession on Fat Tuesday itself. It was very impromptu. There had been groups founded, including one that staged a parade with 12 floats that very evening. He was given a lot of credit that he deserved, maybe he didn't, by a historian in the 1960s by named Julian Lee Rayford. He was an amazing folklorist. He was a sculptor. He did so many things. He styled himself as a historian. He didn't let the facts get in the way. He gave a whole lot of credit to Joe Kane, and he remains with us today.
What was the scholar's name?
Julian Lee Rayford was the historian who gave so much credit. So you can't take into account Joe Kane without Julian Lee Rayford. He just gave this guy like a Freddie Mercury, Elvis existence all rolled into one.
That's probably why he is so, you know.
Yes.
I mean, there's this. I've seen like the pictures. Only pictures I think I've seen of Joe Kane. It's him in costume.
Yes, he in his first procession, 1868. And he only did it a couple of years. He styled himself as a fictional Chickasaw chief, Chief Schlackabamaremsko. Try to say that 3 times fast.
I was not going to. I saw the name and I thought, "There's no way I'm
Don't
going
go
to try
there.
to say that." I'm just going to say he was wearing a costume because I could not pronounce it.
He staged his walking procession later on a float, added a band to it for several years. Then he retired to Mobile and did move to Bayou La Battery, like you realized. He died in 1901, and he died in relative obscurity. It was only in the 1960s but he was resurrected in two sense through this history by Mr. Rafer, but also Mr. Rafer had his remains and that of his wife reinterred in Mobile in our historic Church Street Cemetery. There was a procession from the Cathedral of the Immaculate Procession. Soon, the Sunday before Mardi Gras was named Joe Cane Day. He is the only person in Mobile Carnival that has a day named after him. There are multiple parades and events named after him. He is the most famous person in Mobile Carnival and definitely a character.
Well, I think there might be a Cart Blackwell Day.
Yeah, we can have a Cart Blackwell Day.
No.
I mean, did you ever
Art
think?
for your dog.
I mean, did you ever think though that you would actually, because like I said, you're from Selma, and did you ever think that this was going to be your expertise? Is Mardi Gras and Carnival season? I mean, that's just amazing.
I love Mobile. It's a wonderful city, and as a trained historian, there's so much of a past to celebrate, and Mardi Gras is one common denominator to the whole of Mobile's long, rich history. I find it fascinating. It's also a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm sure.
That I'm from out of town, it will never lose its mystique. It will always bring out the inner child, and everyone, particularly me. So I never foresaw it being something I would be involved in work-wise, but it's an honorable tradition to serve.
That's true. That is true. A lot of history and a lot of important
It makes a
stories
nice
to tell.
collusion of work and play.
Yes, exactly. Definitely.
Yeah, and so I know you've written for us a few times. One of my favorite articles from you is the one about the Mobile Renaissance, mainly because you just cover so much in there, and it's just amazing. Tell me some of your favorite things that you researched about that. Maybe just tell people why you chose the title The Mobile Renaissance.
Mobile of the early 20th century was a fascinating community. It, like today, had a glorious past which to reflect upon, an exciting present, but a very interesting future to contemplate. And the Mobile Renaissance was that excitement, that energy about what was going on, but also what preceded it. And it involved artists who did murals and paintings, numerous writers, historians, archaeologists. That whole fusion of cultural energy is something I find very fascinating, and that it was focused on this old city that has so many golden ages and so much history to it. It's just an interesting period in the oldest city in Alabama's history.
Yeah, I just loved it because you covered a little bit of everything, and I felt like I was really immersed in all of that history. I just love it.
For me, one of the draws of Mobile is its art present. Art is such a huge theme of Carnival. It's a vital part of this city's existence, the sculpture, the painting, the buildings, and they're the backdrops. They are what inspire people throughout the year, not just in Carnival. They're not just associated with major historic events. That's what makes Mobile beautiful, is its architectural, its artistic, its natural beauty, and the artists and the creative individuals of the Mobile Renaissance definitely recognized it.
Yeah,
Well, just even looking out the window of our studio, our makeshift studio here today, there's a really cool mural down the street over here to my right, and then over to the left there's this nice green space that has 2 or 3 statues in front of it. And I was going to ask you if you could tell it. Well, of course, I'm sure you know. I'm putting you on the spot, Todd. Who the statues are. I noticed one that's encased in glass, or at least just from the waist down, it looks like.
Y'all have this perfect space to be interviewing someone who's a curator of Carnival. That is Mardi Gras Square.
Okay, perfect.
It is a truly historic site. 5 historic courthouses have occupied that site, and it was vacant for over a decade. And the city, over the past few years, has redeveloped it to celebrate the tradition of Carnival. It has sculptures representing individuals such as Joe Cane, a figure representing the Excelsior Band, one of the oldest brass bands, recently won a National Endowment of the Arts Prize. It is represented there.
Wow.
They're representations of kings and queens of Carnival, so it taps into that royal side. So you have a public square on a very historic site in the center of one of our historic districts that recognizes Mobile's greatest party.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
We love the party.
Right now they're having a party because I noticed that there's a bunch of school children who are outside playing.
Are they?
And yes, I think they were just on a field trip right next next door to the fort.
They visited the museum earlier
Oh,
too.
Yes.
okay.
Oh, good. It's
so
nice.
much fun to see
Yeah.
a park used that
Yeah,
way.
and it's nice to see that vibrancy and having children just run free. It's a beautiful day today in Mobile, so everyone needs to come visit
And
Mobile.
what a privilege to be close enough or live in such a historic location.
It's a magical city.
It is.
So, Cart, we mentioned that you are the curator at the Mobile Carnival Museum. So I kind of want to know how you get your exhibits, like where do is it all donated from local families? And I know you have, I think, 14 galleries, so that's a lot of curation that you have to do. So exactly where do you acquire all of this?
We change out our galleries at least once a year. Some galleries change out 4 times a year. Some rotations are fairly simple, like we know for certain organizations, we're going to receive their trains, their crowns, their scepters. Another series is looking at all of our area mystic societies. We call it the Mystique of the Mystic. Currently we have a show on the Mystics of Time. I love that series. It gives me a little job security since there are 80 organizations. We have another series that's our thematic series where we're looking at different aspects of Carnival. We currently have an exhibit called Carnival and War. We looked at Carnival and Jewelry, so we had bling. Couture, that was a fun one.
Yeah.
We have one coming up on architecture. We're going to start doing an exhibit, every other exhibit in that series, on some of our living artists. We represent over 70 living artists.
Wow.
We rely on donations. We have loans from so many institutions, the Alabama Department of Archives and History,
Right.
the Mobile Museum of Art, the History Museum of Mobile, the Historic New Orleans Collection, Historic Natchez. So it's constantly having pieces on loan from public, private, and institutional collections.
Do you get people who call you often and say, hey, I've got this
We do.
crown,
Daily.
can you do something with it?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have to turn people away? Because I know even at the state archives in Montgomery, they'll get some things and people, they're like, the archivists are like, we really don't need that. But maybe you could do X, Y, and Z with it. So, I mean, do you feel almost like inundated as they do sometimes with some of the things that are...
It's always a delight because you can hear the energy in someone's voice. We
Right.
can't accept everything, but we can direct people if it doesn't meet our mission, our purpose, where they might go. And if it's something they really want to have on display, we can always have it on temporary display.
That's true.
That's
yeah.
nice.
So out of all of those that you were talking about, the different galleries and exhibits, is there anyone in particular that you're most proud of?
It's the thematic series where we
Okay.
do a deep dive on subjects such as food, such as hospitality. We had an exhibit a little over a year ago on invitations where we had over 700 invitations going back to the 1850s. And the only mail I get are bills or magazines. So to get a pretty
Well,
invitation is gorgeous.
I mean, but even when we do send invitations card, I have to let you know, I don't think anyone knows what RSVP means anymore
I
because
marvel about it.
you can say, what? So then you should know better. I'm just going to tell you, I'm so disappointed because we do send out invitations for things and it's, whether it's work related or personal, and people won't respond, and then all of a sudden you call them a few days in advance and say, let me know if you're coming. And sometimes people will say, oh, I didn't know, I was supposed to let you know. That's what RSVP means, honey. So, but how have the invitations evolved over the years? I mean,
They're
because that
fascinating.
kind of
They
news-
started out over the top and they maintained being over the top.
I love it.
Several years ago, I received one and it was a pink box that arrived in the mail. Then it was another pink box, and then you actually opened the invitation of several layers, then a paper mache butterfly.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
over the top. I mean, you can learn so much from them about the way events were held,
Right.
how things have evolved. That was just one exhibit. We did an exhibit on Carnival Silver that my board got a little bit angry at because we had to up the insurance for a little bit.
Oh,
The couture one was a joy because we had over 1,000 garments loaned to us.
Wow.
We had to rotate it out twice, and we were very conscious with the 2 rotations to have half international couture, half pieces made in Mobile. We literally traced over a 200-year period from 1922 to 2022, from the black Chanel cocktail dress to something wore that very year during Carnival.
Wow.
Right.
It's just, there's so many ways which to explore Mobile's living tradition, and that thematic series provides a vehicle where we can explore an aspect of it that we could dedicate the whole museum to.
So, some of the, because we had, this may have been when I first started working for the magazine or right before, there was a department about
Jessica Johnson wrote about are you talking about
the gown?
The gown, yeah. Jessica Johnson came down here and
it had the most, I'm just going to call it a train. What is the actual title for that attaches? Is it a train? Okay, because I think of that in terms of a wedding gown. But they are amazingly ginormous, and I think of this because I'm only 5 feet tall, and so just to be able to carry the weight and the length of some of these trains are huge. But then just looking, people can go to your website and look at some of the photos because the details are just amazing. And I was going to look up your website, and you can tell me maybe what your website address is, and we can give it a shout out.
MobileCarnivalMuseum.com.
Okay, MobileCarnivalMuseum.com. Y'all go visit, and then you can take a personal trip to see these. But when did that start? Having that type of costume with so much, there's so much embroidery, there's so much jewels and different feathers and things that are attached, and I can only imagine how much they weigh.
Yeah.
Whereas the parade side of Carnival began in the 1830s, it was only in the 1870s that you had the royal side of Carnival.
Okay.
You have 80 area mystic societies, 4 local carnival associations, all of which have their royalties. So it's in the 1870s that these trains, not Thomas on the Track train, but
right.
the regal garments appear, and they're fascinating.
They're
We have the
gorgeous.
world's largest collection of them. All of them locally designed and made. And
Nice.
they're much more than garments. You mentioned the weight. Some of them are engineering feats. The most beautiful aspect is the artistic component because they're like medieval or Renaissance tapestries. They tell the story of the wearer, the monarch, their relationship to Mobile, their relationship to Carnival. They embrace traditions of family, nature,
It's almost
history.
like a quilt.
That-
It tells
that's a
stories just
wonderful
like
likeness.
a quilt would do. So, but yeah, I've always been fascinated by them, and I just think they're absolutely gorgeous. Of course, I love any tiara and crown as well, and a scepter. But when you add the train to it, then
They're
everybody's
very regal.
gonna feel like royalty.
For sure. Well, I wanted to ask you something. The UA Press published a book by Emily Blashwa, and it's been a while, but it's called The Story of Alabama and 14 Foods. And she was talking about how bananas were imported into Mobile in the 1920s. I was just wondering, are there any other foods that are imported here?
Mobile has a long, rich culinary history, and we had up to the 1970s more bananas in the port of Mobile than any other in the nation. We have so many firsts in terms of our culinary traditions. I would say our seafood is a vibrant part of the
definitely.
industry and just the taste.
And
of
see,
it.
that's what I would always think of is the seafood. But when Emily's book talked about bananas, and that just blew
You
my
can't make
mind.
banana pudding,
It's
but
like-
West Indies salad is pretty
Yeah.
good.
Well, that's
So
true.
good.
I was not expecting the bananas either. So, I mean, is there, what do you think is, or maybe the biggest import for Mobile?
Mobile has the 9th largest port by tonnage in the nation, and I would say in terms of things exiting our port, it is very diverse. Of course, timber goods, coal coming down the river. We have so much going on, and we're a growing port. Forbes magazine has predicted that we will be possibly the 6th largest port in the nation within a couple of years. So we have a lot going on here.
That
That's
is
wonderful.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of growth. Well, I mean, again, just looking out of the windows, I'm seeing some excavators and a lot of equipment over there in the field that they're starting
And
to.
I'd be
do
remiss,
some
we have
construction.
ships during the in the street during Mardi Gras. They're just called floats.
Oh, yes. The streets become an ocean.
Exactly, they do. Well, I've never been here for Mardi Gras, so
You'll have to
we're
come.
gonna
It's
have to make
magic.
it.
And that it's several weeks of parades.
Yeah.
There's multiple opportunities to embrace it, and sometimes the big carnival weekend that culminates in Fat Tuesday, that's not for everybody. The weekends preceding are a little slower paced, and oftentimes you can enjoy the city a lot more because it doesn't have the larger crowds. on the
Right,
weekend.
right, yeah.
That's true.
I love New Orleans, but Mobile's better. That's only because I'm an Alabama, so I gotta say that. Well, Cart, we've reached the point in our interview where we'd like to ask you a few more questions in our segment called Before You Go. And these are just random questions, a little more rapid fire, but,
Bring them up.
I was going to ask, since we were talking about Mobile and we're talking about carnival season, I do know that Mobile is famous for its New Year's moon pie drop. So, do you even like moon pies? And if you do, what's your favorite flavor?
I had never eaten a moon pie before I started working for the Carnival Museum, and I do have an opinion on them. Never eat the banana ones. The vanillas are
That's
okay.
what I like banana.
The chocolates are
Yes.
the best, and there are two ways that you can add a little kick to it. You can put them in the freezer and maybe dip them in a little bourbon. That is great. You can also nuke them in the microwave for a second or two and put them in some ice cream. So you can have them
Good
cold
to
right off
know,
the street, spice them up a little bit, or have them with some good old ice cream.
I know I
recommend
can
with
depend
it.
on you for some good
I
info.
mean, I've heard there's something where people, I think, they soak them in milk and it helps to absorb and it makes it more of a cakier
It does. It
thing.
would loosen up a
And
little
so
bit.
I haven't tried that, but I mean, that's TikTok. TikTok will show you anything and everything you want to know, I'm sure. But no, banana, chocolate's my favorite, but I can't believe you don't like banana, especially since that's a big import from Mobile.
No.
Gosh, Cart.
I love the history of the banana dogs, but
Yeah.
not the
Banana
Not the banana flavors. Okay.
All
I
right,
gotcha.
another fun question. So, if you had a theme song that would start to play when you came into the room, what would it be?
I'm drawing a blank for once.
Well, do you play the piano?
I'm not a pianist.
You're not?
so-
Okay, all right, yeah. So, I was trying to think of what's your favorite song then? Do you have a favorite song?
I'm drawing a complete
That's
blank.
all
This is
right,
a
that's all
miracle.
right.
This is real.
It's
These are hard
okay.
questions, aren't they? Okay. Well, then, how about this question? Would you relive your high school days if you could?
Yes, I think it would be fun.
And was that in Selma?
That was in Selma. I love the present, but Selma was a lovely community in which to be raised and still has so many great people.
Oh, yeah.
It's always nice to go
definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think I would want to go back in the days with the phones and everything. I think
Right.
I got up just in time.
You know,
I got lucky. I got
We
lucky.
all did.
Yeah.
I mean, because things were a little bit easier.
No, definitely, definitely. Nobody knew where you were.
Right.
So you got up to all kinds of things. So if somebody gave you $1 million to start up your own business, do you have an idea of what you might want to do, or some kind of project you might want to do?
I know exactly what I
Okay.
want to do. I would foster the ability for other historians to write and research, because we have such a great past here, and Alabama Heritage does an amazing job of highlighting it. Historians need help.
They
I would
do,
love to do
they
that.
do.
Grant writing program, just to give us a little juice. So to
That's
speak.
amazing. I love that answer.
I think that's great too. And Alabama Heritage, if you're not a subscriber, you can be at alabamaheritage.com, and it makes a great gift, by the way. Cart, what is your favorite book?
My favorite book is Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth. I've loved it since I was
Great.
13.
Say that. Oh, I'm sorry. Say it again.
Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth.
Nice.
She's such a wonderful author. She could describe walking into a room, a setting, an emotion, and one of those. She could make, even though a lady, she could make a man feel something, and vice versa. She just could put you in the moment. A brilliant writer.
And her short stories are amazing.
Oh, gosh.
Oh my gosh, and there's something for everybody because her ghost stories are just
They are great.
They're creepy.
I only read the first one the other day, and
Yeah.
it's like, whoa.
Yeah, they are
Looking over my
creepy.
shoulder.
I read them, like during the COVID epidemic. I downloaded a book and it was full of her ghost stories that were just amazing. All right, so sort of piggybacking off of that, which fictional character in literature do you most identify with?
One of my favorites is from another Edith Wharton novel, and it's The Age of Innocence, and it's Newland Archer.
Oh yeah.
I mean, someone who's very much closely examining their present and then also looking back at it later in life. I love that character. But it's also someone who's bound by tradition, and I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's another great one. Everything is so good by her.
Okay, so here's your last question.
Okay.
Which 3 famous would you invite to a dinner party?
Oh, goodness.
And they could be alive or dead.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to have the character Sophia Petrillo,
Oh yes.
because she's a rock star. So is Phil Getty.
Yes.
I would love to have the architect Frank Lloyd Wright. I would love to have musician. I would love to have Cher because she's a
Oh,
rock
yeah.
star.
For
So,
sure.
I
Well,
mean,
let's think
I would
about
be
that.
like the
We would have Cher,
fly on the wall with us.
Estelle Getty, and Cher
I'm
and
coming
Frank
to that
Lloyd
dinner party.
Wright. Wow.
I wonder
what
who the
kind of
diva would
conversation would
be.
be.
I mean,
I mean,
That's awesome.
it would be your dog.
Yeah, well, that's true. I love that
We
dog.
do. We have to give your dog
That's
a
my
shout
dog by
out.
proxy.
Well, listen, we want to thank you, Cart Blackwell, for being our guest on
This was a
Coffee
treat.
and History, a conversation with Alabama Heritage. You can find our podcast wherever you listen, and you can also watch us on your YouTube channel. And don't forget that if you want to subscribe to the magazine, log on to alabamaheritage.com. But until then, thanks for listening, and I think I need some more coffee. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Okay, great job.